Welcome to the PreSnap Podcast presented by LineStar. All things fantasy football with a sprinkle of sports betting. Alongside Tyler Weeman, I'm Shannon Somerville. It is week 10 in the NFL. We are halfway through the football season. It is crazy. So week 10, we've got a lot of great games on the slate, including one in Germany. The Seahawks are taking on the Bucks in Munich, Germany. We're going international. And also on today's show, we'll be getting into some sleeper picks. We've got a huge sleeper pick at the running back position going relatively unowned right now in daily fantasy. You're going to want to pick them up, so stay tuned for that. Plus, we'll have your touchdown calls, prop bets, and our underdog picks of the week. We've been doing pretty well at our underdog picks lately.
We have. We've been crushing them.
So stay tuned for that on the show. Right now, first, let's talk about this Munich game. We've got Gino versus the GOAT in Munich.
I know.
Have you ever been to Germany?
I have not.
Yeah.
Yes.
Add it to the bucket list, though. Seems pretty good from all of the footage that I've seen of NFL Network.
I was supposed to make it out a couple years ago for good old Oktoberfest, but just didn't work out.
So you don't have a German accent to share with us for today?
I don't, unfortunately.
Another storyline kind of related to Gino was Pete Carroll earlier in the week was asked about Gino and kind of his development. He kind of ruffled a little bit of feathers when he said, well, he wears a wristband with the play calls on it, and alluding to the fact that former Seattle Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson did not wear it. So then Russell Wilson had to chime in, clap back, said, you know what? We won a lot without a wristband when I was there. What do you think about that? Hot topic this week.
Yeah, well, right now, Wilson doesn't have much to talk about. He's looked bad.
You know who does have some stuff to talk about? Kirk Cousins.
Yes, he does.
Bling. His video of him is going viral this week. After he beat the Commanders, he just went shirtless on the airplane, started dancing with his teammates' chains all around his neck. It was an absolute interesting sight to see. I guess interesting would be the right word to say.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't expect it out of
Kirk Cousins, who I saw on Twitter.
Did you like that?
Yeah, it's awesome to see him partying like that. Especially, I saw on Twitter there was a photo of him in a plaid shirt. And the caption was, "This is Kirk," basically like, looking like he just came out of Kohl's, and then juxtaposition of him just blinged out.
Yeah, he essentially looks for every press conference, looks like the standard, like semi-athletic dad that, is coming
somehow
out of
found
Kohl's
himself on
Target
as the starting quarterback of an NFL football team. A good NFL football team right now that's leading the NFC North. Let's get to our daily fantasy projections for today. We've got some good ones for you in fantasy. In week 10, let's start off with the quarterback position. The first quarterback we're talking about this week is Patrick Mahomes, who is now the front runner for MVP. He took over that spot from Josh Allen, who fell a couple spots. But hey, you know what? That happens when you put up two back-to-back 400-plus yard passing games. He's been absolutely phenomenal, as you expect from Mahomes. And this week, he's got a pretty favorable matchup going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, whose pass defense ranks 27th in DVOA. Tyler, what do you make of Mahomes this week for daily fantasy?
Yeah, this week for the quarterback position, it's kind of a weird week for quarterbacks. So Josh Allen may not play. Stafford may not play. Kyler Murray is hurt. We're not really sure what's going on there. So a lot of the high-end quarterbacks are gone. Patrick Mahomes, though, is there.
Yeah.
And like you said, he's been playing absolutely amazing. This Jacksonville matchup is good. And they're allowing 43% more fantasy points to the QB when away. So they have been worse on the road. Mahomes has been great at home, away. He has all the weapons. They've added Tony. I really like him this week.
Another guy who's been crushing it this week is Bears quarterback Justin Fields, who had quite the party and just put up some unbelievable video game-like numbers last week against the Miami Dolphins. He had 123 passing yards, 178 rushing yards. He had 3 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, just completely crushed it. Now everyone's changing their tune on Justin Fields after a poor start to the season for him. He's turned things around, has certainly certainly turned a lot of people's attention toward him. And he has a favorable matchup this week going up against the Detroit Lions, who rank 26th in rush defense DVOA and in pass defense DVOA as well. So that bodes well for Justin Fields.
It absolutely does. He's in a great spot here. And it's just remarkable, like the change that we've seen out of this offense and out of Fields. It's really nice to see that they're actually calling plays and designing an offense around the skill sets that he has. So I love it. You know, he had that giant week last week. He's had a couple other good weeks right before that. And those were against Dallas and the Patriots. So it wasn't like bad defenses. Miami, their defense has been poor. Detroit's defense, we all know it's been really bad. But he's just been playing great. Detroit ranks 29th, allowing 277 passing yards a game. And then they're also allowing 1.8 touchdowns per game passing. And you want to add in, they're not great versus stopping quarterback rushes, averaging 5.5 rushes for 29 yards. We know Justin Fields, if he's getting 6 carries, he's getting more than 29 yards. So I like the play.
The Lions did stop Aaron Rodgers, which any other season you would say, oh, that's a pretty great feat. But this season, the Packers and Aaron Rodgers just have not looked good. So maybe not the same bragging point you would have maybe alluded to in years past.
Absolutely. And Rodgers still had 209 yards, a touchdown. He just had a couple picks that he gave up. So
next up, let's take a look at Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Another guy who's just been putting up some monster numbers. Over 300 passing yards the last 2 weeks. He's also had 3 passing touchdowns each of the last 2 weeks, going up against a Cleveland defense that's relatively mediocre in terms of the passing game. What do you make of this matchup for Tua?
Yeah, this is one of the other higher scoring games on the slate. We really don't have many games on this slate that have a high potential score. This is one of them. Cleveland's middle of the pack versus a passing defense. And we know Miami is going to throw the ball. They're going to try and get the ball to their playmakers. And Tua just sets up in a good spot here.
Now let's take a look at our running back position. The first player we're looking at is Jacksonville Jaguars running back Travis Etienne, who's had over 100 yards the past 3 games. He's been unbelievable for the Jags, really finding his stride on that offense. This week he'll go up against the Chiefs defense that ranks 20th in rush defense DVOA. So kind of a favorable matchup for him. We did see Derrick Henry kind of carve up this Chiefs defense a week ago. What do you think of Travis Etienne's spot?
It's funny that you brought up Henry, just because the work that Etienne is getting is a Henry-like workload right now. They're using him a ton. He is the centerpiece of this offense. He's in a decent matchup. They can pass it to him. He can run the ball. He's great. And really for this workload in this matchup, he's just too cheap right now.
The one thing I did see online when I was researching this was head coach Doug Peterson said that they might try to change that workload quite a bit, and they're discussing a bigger role for the backup running back, JaMycal Hasty. What do you make of that? Is it just coach speak? How should we take that as from a daily fantasy perspective?
I thought Hasty would have a bigger workload than he does. But for now, I would say it's probably coach speak. They really need Etienne. So I would be shocked if they really give too much to Hasty. You know, it very well could be that Hasty goes from 4 carries to 5.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a bigger workload.
Fair enough. It's coach speak.
Yeah.
Not quite sure what to make of it, but something to take note of. Take note of this next matchup. This one is one of those ones that I deem mouthwatering. We got Giants running back Saquon Barkley, the fantasy beast this week, is going up against the Houston Texans. Barkley is averaging 97 yards per game. That is 3rd best in the NFL right now. And he's going up against a Houston Texans defense that ranks 32nd dead last in rush defense DVOAs. They've been absolutely getting crushed by RB1s. In fact, RB1s are averaging 122 yards per game against the Houston Texans. Saquon Barkley, he's in a great spot. What do you think?
He's in an amazing spot. Not to mention, all of that you talked about with how many yards they're giving up. They're also giving up 1.3 rushing touchdowns per game. Mm-hmm. And over the last 3 weeks to the RB1, they've given up 6 touchdowns in 3 weeks. So, we know Jacobs crushed them a couple weeks ago. Henry crushed him.
219 rushing yards is what Derrick Henry put up against him. And even Miles Sanders had 93 last week.
And on not that many carries.
Right. So, and Saquon Barkley, I would say, is a better talent than Miles Sanders. Also, he doesn't have to compete with him as many.
Henry and Jacobs had week-winning scores, and so Saquon absolutely able to do that.
Well, let's talk about the Houston Texans in a positive light now. We kind of just crushed their defense, but they do have a bright spot in their running back, Dameon Pierce. The rookie has been phenomenal. He had 139 yards last game, which was a career high. That was against a Philadelphia defense that ranks 3rd in defensive DVOA. And this week, he's going up against the Giants, who are 24th in rush defense DVOA. What do you make of Pierce's spot this week?
Yeah, I love Pierce in the spot, especially at this ownership. The Giants are ranked 30th in allowing 122 yards to the running back per game. They're also allowing 31% more fantasy points to the RB when home. So I really like Pierce this week. We know the offense is centered around him. They're going to give him the ball as much as they possibly can.
Also, Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator for the Giants, called him the angriest runner he's seen in the National Football League. Yeah, that's some high praise right there. Praise, we saw it against the Eagles.
Yeah, he looked great.
He was carving them up. Now let's take a look at our wide receivers. First guy we're going to talk about, no brainer here. We're talking about Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill. The Cheetah's been absolutely crushing it. 1,104 yards this year. He leads the NFL by over 200 yards. Justin Jefferson trails him by 237 yards. He's averaging 122 yards per game this week, going up against a Cleveland defense that ranks 21st in pass DVOA versus wide receiver ones. Good luck trying to defend the Cheetah this week. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I really like this play. I mean, Tyreek's just been amazing the entire year. The one thing, though, that we can say and we should probably bring up here is that with the quarterback issues, possibly no Stafford, no Josh Allen, that the top-end wide receivers aren't going to look quite as good. So this ownership on Tyreek might get juiced up a little bit. If guys are paying up, they're probably all going to go to Tyreek just because of the quarterback issues on those other teams. But speaking of Cooper Kupp, I mean, he's this year's Cooper Kupp. Yeah. He is getting crazy amount of yards. He's on pace for over 2,000 yards. He just needs to get in the end zone a little bit more.
And it's crazy because the questions before the season were, will he be as productive as he was with Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback? We've gotten our answer halfway through the season.
He keeps getting it done, and McDaniels keeps scheming it so he can get the ball in open spots. And when he does that, he has the wheels to do whatever he wants with the ball.
Another guy with some wheels is Jaguars wide receiver Christian Kirk. He's averaging 64 receiving yards per game. You've seen him also getting a little bit better chemistry with his quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. This week, he's going up against a Kansas City Chiefs defense that I have personally been picking on the past few weeks for my prop bets because their pass DVOA ranks dead last against wide receiver ones. Anytime I've picked a wide receiver one against this Kansas City Chiefs for a prop bet, they've all gone over. Mike Williams, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, you name it, they've all crushed their respective overs in the prop market. What do you expect for Kirk this week in fantasy?
I really like Kirk this week in fantasy. One of the things the Jaguars have done is they have not thrown the ball that much this year. In this matchup against Mahomes, they're probably going to be forced to. And when Kirk has got targeted a lot, good things have happened.
Right.
So I like Kirk. His ownership isn't too bad. His price is still pretty cheap. I'll be going there.
He said that when Trevor Lawrence is rolling, the whole offense is rolling. What I like about this, too, is that they're going to have to be rolling because they're going up against Patrick Mahomes, and this is going to have to be a high-scoring game.
Yeah.
He's going to have to air it out.
They are barely, getting to 30 attempts per game, passing attempts here. I mean, Mahomes the other week threw like 60.
Next up, we're talking about Cleveland Browns wide receiver Amari Cooper. Homecoming game for him, going back to his old stomping grounds in Miami. He went to Miami Northwestern High School, so he's got some friends and family on hand for this one, and he could show out for them. He had 131 yards and a touchdown against Cincinnati 2 weeks ago, coming off a bye week, going up against a Miami pass defense that ranks 31st in DVOA. He's the go-to target of Jacoby Brissett. What do you make of his matchup for Week 10?
Miami's defense has been terrible. Very likely that Cleveland's able to score some points here. They're able to get in the end zone, and if they do, Cooper's likely going to be one of the guys that gets it done. Wide receivers versus Miami over the last 4 games have averaged 9 targets a game. Now, when Cooper has averaged 9 targets a game or more this season, it's happened 4 times, and he's averaging 6.7 receptions for 80 yards and a touchdown. If that's the baseline, sign me up.
Yeah, absolutely. Sign me up for these tight ends we're about to talk about. I mean, we're always going to be talking about Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce, who leads all tight ends in receptions, targets, and yards this season. His matchup this week, going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who rank 32nd in pass DVOA versus opposing tight ends. Sign me up for this one, Tyler. What do you think?
It's funny, and I'm glad you brought up the DVOA stat here, because if you look at the season-long totals against tight end, they look like they're good against tight end, but they've played nobody.
Right.
They've played 2 tight ends that are decent at catching the ball. Now they get Travis Kelce. Right? So
good luck.
The DVOA stat is, takes away, who
defensive
they're playing.
value over average. We love that. That takes into account quality of opponent, which is so crucial, especially when you're evaluating these stats. It's a lot easier to go to DVOA as opposed to just going through which tight ends have they played. So.
Yeah. And, I mean, you absolutely can do that, and we make it easy online, start with the matchups tool. But, Kelce's in a great spot. He has the best quarterback throwing it to him. So I like it.
Another tight end you can look at this week is Broncos rookie tight end Greg Dulcich. He's had a career high 87 yards last week. Tennessee, his opponent for Week 10, 13th in pass DVOA versus tight ends this season. Dulcich has been a great outlet for Russell Wilson to throw to. What do you make of his matchup this week?
So they are 31st, allowing 68 yards per game to the tight end. Dulcich has looked great. He only has a couple of games in the NFL so far, but he has been targeted a lot. He's been targeted often. And they just had a bye week, so he can further get involved in this system. I really like him. I know I told you the other day that I think the Broncos could kind of come up from the ashes a little bit. And I think this first week is really when we're going to see if they do have any changes. I would expect some. And I think Dulcich is going to be more involved than he was, and he was already involved a lot. They're also without KJ Hamler, so just a little more chance for extra targets.
I actually don't hate the Broncos as a potential underdog pick. I did not pick them for my underdog pick of the week. I did think about it, though, when I was evaluating this particular matchup. And now let's get to some defenses. The Minnesota Vikings are going up against the Buffalo Bills. Ownership so far has been pretty high on the Vikings, which surprised me a bit. Yes, I know Josh Allen is questionable this week. What do you make of it, though? Minnesota ranks 19th in defensive DVOA.
I think just looking at it, most likely it is just because we have a backup quarterback stepping in. But Case Keenum isn't that bad. And I even think you could use him in DFS lineups just because he is only $5K. He's super cheap. So at 17% owned, I don't love the defense. It's super hard to project defensive points. And so I would probably be staying away.
All right. How about the Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the Saints? They get some reinforcements back. TJ Watt is expected to be back in Week 10, along with safety DeMonte Casey as well. And you really can't undervalue TJ Watt's impact on this team. What do you make of the Steelers this week against the Saints, who are just 21st in offensive DVOA?
Yeah, the Saints offense hasn't been that great. Andy Dalton has been interception prone lately. So I really like this spot. The Steelers D has been terrible, but that's been without TJ Watt. Watt is a total difference maker. Yeah. He changes this whole entire defense. And at such low ownership, kind of interested in taking a couple shots at the Steelers and see if TJ Watt can really make that big of a difference. So I like it.
I like this pick a lot. They haven't been healthy since Week 1. In Week 1, the Steelers had 7 sacks. Without TJ Watt in 8 games, they've only had 8 sacks.
Yeah, and
7 games.
We saw the same thing last year when he wasn't out there. Their D wasn't that great. When he was, their D was elite.
Just such a playmaker for them.
Yeah, and we're getting, a price that's just down a little bit on them because they've been so bad lately.
So those are some great picks for you in daily fantasy. All that analysis, projections, you can find it on the LineStar app, linestarapp.com. Make sure to check that out. It's a great tool for us. Also, it has a lineup optimizer as well. So if maybe you don't feel like doing the work, you can just plug it in and let it find you the optimal lineup for daily fantasy in Week 10. Now let's get to our touchdown calls of the day for Week 10. Tyler, who are you going to for an anytime touchdown in Week 10?
I'm going super chalky this week. We're going Saquon Barkley. We're against Houston. Houston's terrible versus running backs. And they've given up 6 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks to running back. So let's go.
Let's go to a running back in Seattle. We're going overseas for this pick, Tyler. I am going with Seattle Seahawks running back Kenneth Walker. He's had 7 touchdowns in the last 5 games. He's tied for first in the lead with most red zone rushing touchdowns, tied with Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry has a tough matchup this week against the Denver Broncos that's allowed the lowest opponent red zone scoring percentage in the NFL by 20%. So I was like, I can't pick Henry, but I can pick Walker because he's going up against the Tampa Bay Bucks, who are 25th in opposing scoring percentage in the red zone. Sign me up for Kenneth Walker. He's been an unbelievable player for the Seahawks team.
He has.
And maybe he'll celebrate after the game with some beer and broths in Germany. What do you think?
Sounds like a good time to me.
Now let's take a look at our prop bets for Week 10. Tyler, where are you going in the prop market?
I'm going with Darnell Mooney over 42.5 yards. That's at minus 135 on the sports books. He's hit this in 6 straight games. He's been over in 7 of 10. And Detroit is allowing 190 yards to the wide receiver per game. So I like it.
I'm going to Jags wide receiver Christian Kirk over 59.5 receiving yards. You can find this prop on the Underdog Fantasy app. And Kirk has been averaging 64 receiving yards per game. He's gone over in 6 of 9 games this season and going up against a Kansas City pass defense that ranks 32nd in pass defense DVOA versus the opposing team's wide receiver 1. Mike Adams, Michael Pittman, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, they've all crushed their respective overs when playing the Chiefs. So I love this prop, especially since he's going to be going up against a Mahomes-led offense, and so Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk are going to have to find a nice connection early and often in order to keep up with Mahomes in this one. I think Kirk will crush that 59.5 receiving yards prop.
I like it.
All right. So let's get to our Underdog Pick of the Weeks. The dog of the day. Tyler, every dog has its day every once in a while. Who are you going with for your underdog pick in Week 10?
I'm going back to the Detroit Lions. I went with them last week. They pulled out the win, and they're going to this week again. They're +3 versus the Bears. This team is just coming together. Their defense is starting to play a little bit better.
Yeah.
I like the Lions.
I'm taking the Jags. I just talked about Christian Kirk and how I'm taking his receiving yards over, and I'm going with the Jags in this one, plus 9.5 to cover that spread against the Chiefs. I think that is just way too generous to the Chiefs, especially considering the Jags, despite their 3-6 records, have never lost by more than 8 points this season. Their average margin of defeat is just 6 points. And they played the Giants, the Chargers, the Eagles, so that's kind of saying something right there. And you're talking about a Chiefs team that got beat by the Colts, okay? I think the Jags can cover this spread. And, take the Jags to cover this one. Also, I do have some notes for you in terms of the underdog. This is the year of the underdog. Favorites have yet to cover more games than underdog in any given week. The favorites winning at a 61.5% clip. The underdogs cashing at a 56.5% clip. If you were to bet $110 on every underdog to cover, you'd be up $1,130. That's some real money terms for you.
Nice.
Nice to bet the spread every once in a while. We've been having a lot of success on our picks as well. Last week, if I can remember who I took. I took the Titans to cover. Mm-hmm. They sure did. They almost got the win against Mahomes in Arrowhead.
Yep. I got the Lions versus the Packers, which picking on the Packers this year has been profitable.
Making money moves here on the PreSnap Podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and sign up for notifications. Also, make sure to check out our props show. They're out right now. We give you the 5 best prop bets on Underdog Fantasy and on PrizePicks. So stay tuned for those as well. Good luck to you in Week 10. We'll see you next week.
Have a good one, guys. Bye.